Last night's The Late Show erupted into chaos as Elon Musk clashed with host Stephen Colbert in a jaw-dropping on-air meltdown. Colbert's jabs hit a nerve, Tesla stocks tumbled, and Musk stormed off the set in a blaze of fury. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping stories like this. The lights were bright, the crowd was buzzing, and the energy in the Ed Sullivan Theater crackled like a storm about to break. It was last night's episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and the guest was none other than Elon Musk, the billionaire behind Tesla, SpaceX, and a dozen other world-changing ideas. The audience leaned forward in their seats, expecting laughs and maybe some bold ideas from the famous inventor. But nobody saw the fight coming. Stephen Colbert bounded onto the stage with his usual grin, waving to the crowd as the band played a jazzy tune. He settled behind his desk, shuffled his notes, and looked at Elon, who sat across from him in a sleek black jacket, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. The show started smoothly. Stephen asked about SpaceX's latest rocket launch, and Elon answered with his usual mix of big dreams and techie details. The crowd clapped, loving the talk about Mars and spaceships. But then Stephen's grin turned a little mischievous. "So, Elon," Stephen said, leaning forward, "your Starlink satellites are supposed to bring internet to everyone, right? But I hear they're clogging up the sky, making it hard for astronomers to see the stars. Is your big plan to connect the world? Or to block the universe?" The audience laughed, but it was a nervous kind of laugh. Elon's smile tightened. He shifted in his seat. "Starlink's helping millions," Elon said, his voice steady but clipped. "We're solving real problems, not just whining about the view." The crowd gasped, and Stephen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, solving problems? Like your Tesla Cybertruck? That thing looks like a kid drew a tank on graph paper." The audience roared with laughter, but Elon's face went stiff. Stephen wasn't done. "And let's talk about those Tesla stocks. They're dropping faster than a rocket with no fuel. Investors must be wondering if you're driving the company off a cliff." Elon's jaw clenched. The theater felt hotter, the air heavier. "Tesla's fine," he said, his voice low. "Stocks go up and down. You wouldn't understand running a company like that." Stephen smirked, sensing he'd hit a nerve. "Oh, I get it. You're the genius who's gonna save the world. But your Twitter deal? You bought it, and now it's a mess. People say it's losing value every day. Maybe stick to building cars. Or not, since those keep catching fire." The crowd gasped again, some cheering, others murmuring. Social media was already lighting up with clips of the exchange, and out in the real world, Tesla's stock ticker started to slide. Elon leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're a comedian, Stephen. Stick to jokes. You don't know what it takes to build something real." His voice had an edge, like a blade ready to cut. The audience went quiet, sensing the tension. Stephen didn't back down. He leaned, closer, his voice sharp but playful, like a cat toying with a mouse. "Real? Like your Neuralink brain chips? What's the plan, Elon? Turn us all into robots so we can work for you on Mars." The crowd erupted, some clapping, others whispering. Elon's face turned red. He gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. The theater was a pressure cooker, and everyone could feel it was about to explode. Stephen kept going, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I mean, come on, Elon. Your big ideas sound cool, but they keep tripping over themselves. Hyperloop? Stuck in a tunnel? Boring company? Boring, period." The audience laughed louder, feeding off the energy. Elon's calm was cracking. He opened his mouth to respond, but Stephen cut him off. "And let's not forget your self-driving cars. They're so smart, they keep crashing into things. Maybe they're just trying to escape your leadership." That was the spark. Elon shot up from his chair, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "You think you're clever?" he snapped. "You sit here, mocking people who actually build things, while you just talk for a living." The crowd gasped, some booing, others cheering. Stephen's eyes gleamed, like he'd been waiting for this. He stood too, leaning over his desk. "Talk. For a living? At least I don't promise the moon and deliver a dumpster fire," Stephen fired back. The audience went wild. Elon's hands shook as he reached for his microphone, yanking at the wire. The theater was chaos, cameras zooming in, producers whispering frantically backstage. Was this really happening? Elon's voice boomed. "I don't need this. You're nothing but a loudmouth with a desk." He ripped the mic off his jacket, the wire snapping with a loud pop. The crowd was on its feet, some shouting, others stunned. Stephen just stood there, arms crossed, his smirk unwavering. Elon turned, his face a storm of fury, and stormed toward the exit. The cameras followed, catching every step, but just as he reached the edge of the stage, Stephen called out one last time, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "Hey, Elon, maybe next time try building a thicker skin." The crowd exploded, and Elon froze, his hand on the curtain. What would he do next? The theater was a volcano ready to erupt. Elon Musk stood frozen at the edge of the stage, his hand gripping the heavy curtain, his back to the roaring crowd. Stephen Colbert's final taunt, "Hey, Elon, maybe next time try building a thicker skin," hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. The audience was a mix of cheers and gasps, some shouting Elon's name, others egging Stephen on. The cameras zoomed in, catching the sweat on Elon's brow, the tight line of his mouth. Nobody knew what he'd do next, not even the producers scrambling backstage. Elon turned slowly, his eyes locking onto Stephen like a laser. The crowd hushed, sensing the storm wasn't over. He stepped back toward the center of the stage, his boots heavy on the polished floor. The ripped-off microphone dangled from his jacket, useless now, but his voice didn't need it. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" he said, his tone low and dangerous. "Sitting there, throwing punches at people who actually make things happen. You're a coward, Stephen," the audience gasped. The air sucked out of the room. Stephen's smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered fast, leaning back in his chair like a king on a throne. "Coward? Elon, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Your big dreams are crashing harder than your Tesla stocks. Today." The crowd roared, some clapping, others murmuring nervously. Outside the theater, social media was a wildfire. Clips of the fight were racking up millions of views, and Tesla's stock ticker kept sliding, down another 5% in after hours. Trading. Elon's face twisted, his anger barely contained. "You don't get it," he said, pointing a finger at Stephen. "You mock SpaceX, but we're landing rockets while you're landing punchlines. You laugh at Neuralink, but we're building the future. What do you build? Nothing." His voice cracked with fury, and the crowd split. Some cheered for Elon, others booed, loyal to Stephen. The theater was a battleground now, and neither man was backing down. Stephen stood, rounding his desk to face Elon head-on. "The future? Your future's a graveyard of half-baked ideas," he shot back. "Your boring company tunnels are a joke? Traffic jams underground? Genius? And Starlink? It's a satellite soup up there messing with science. You're not saving the world, Elon. You're just selling hype." The audience erupted again, feeding off the raw energy. Stephen paced the stage, his voice sharp. "And let's talk about X. You turned a platform into a shouting match. Congrats, you built a digital dumpster." Elon took a step closer, his eyes blazing. "You're jealous," he spat. "You're jealous because I'm out there risking everything while you hide behind your desk, safe in your little comedy bubble. You don't have the guts to fail like I do." The crowd was on its feet, some shouting "Elon," others chanting "Stephen." The tension was a tightrope, and both men were walking it blind. Stephen laughed, but it was cold, cutting. "Fail? Oh, you're the king of that. Your Cybertruck's windows shattered on live TV. Your self-driving cars keep hitting stuff. And your Mars plan? You'll be lucky to get a tomato plant up there, let alone a colony. The audience howled, but Elon's face went dark, his hands balling into fists. Stephen didn't stop. Face it, Elon. You're a dreamer who can't deliver. Your companies are bleeding money and your fans are starting to see it. That hit deep. Elon's shoulders tensed, his breath heavy. You're wrong, he said, his voice shaking. You're wrong about me, about Tesla, about everything. I've built more than you'll ever understand. He stepped closer, so close the cameras caught the fire in his eyes. You want to talk failure? Look at your ratings. This show's a relic, and you're just a loudmouth riding its corpse. The crowd gasped, louder than before. Stephen's eyes narrowed, his grin gone. Low blow, Elon, he said, his voice icy. But I'm not the one whose stock is tanking live on air. He pointed at the giant screen behind them, where a news ticker flashed. Tesla stock plummets. 8% amid late show clash. The audience roared, and Elon's face went pale. He stared at the screen, then back at Stephen, his rage boiling over. You think this is a game? Elon shouted, his voice echoing. You're hurting people's livelihoods. My employees, my investors. They're real, not your stupid punchlines. He tore at the loose mic wire again, flinging it to the floor. The crowd was chaos, some booing Stephen, others cheering him. Producers hovered at the stage's edge, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the fire burn. Stephen crossed his arms unflinched. Hurting people? You're the one promising miracles and delivering lemons. Your fans deserve better than a guy who can't take a joke. He leaned in, his voice a dagger. Or maybe you're just mad because I'm right. Elon froze, his chest heaving. The theater was silent, every eye on him. He looked at Stephen, then at the crowd, then at the cameras beaming this disaster to the world. His hand twitched, like he might lunge or bolt. The ticker on the screen flashed again. Tesla down 10%. The weight of it all. Stephen's words, the crowd's roars, the collapsing stocks, pressed down on him. He took a step toward the exit, then stopped, his voice a raw whisper. You're gonna regret this, Stephen. The Ed Sullivan Theater was a cauldron of chaos, the air thick with anticipation. Elon Musk stood at the stage's edge, his hand clutching the velvet curtain, his body rigid as Stephen Colbert's taunt. Hey, Elon, maybe next time, try building a thicker skin. Ignited the crowd. Cheers and boos clashed, a storm of noise that shook the room. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the fury in Elon's eyes, the tremble in his fingers. The world watched, phones buzzing with viral clips, as Tesla's stock plummeted 10% on the giant screen behind them. Elon's world was unraveling live on air, and Stephen stood at his desk, arms crossed, his smirk a blade. What would Elon do next? He spun around, his face a mask of rage, and stormed back to the center of the stage. The dangling microphone wire trailed behind him, a broken leash. You think you can tear me down? He shouted, his voice raw, cutting through the crowd's roar. You're a parasite, Stephen, feeding off people who actually build something. The audience gasped, some cheering for Elon's fire, others booing his venom. Stephen didn't flinch, stepping out from behind his desk, his eyes locked on Elon like a boxer sizing up a rival. Parasite? Stephen fired back, his voice sharp. I'm just holding a mirror up to your failures, Elon. Your Tesla stocks are crashing because people see through you. Your Cybertruck's a joke, your tunnels are useless, and your X platform's a circus. The crowd erupted, some chanting Stephen's name, others shouting for Elon. The screen flashed, Tesla down 12%. Social media was a war zone. Hashtags like Colbert vs. Musk and Tesla crash trending worldwide. Elon's jaw tightened, his hands balled into fists. You're wrong, Elon growled, stepping closer, his voice shaking with conviction. "I'm building the future, SpaceX, Neuralink, Starlink. You mock them because you're scared of what I can do." His eyes burned, daring Stephen to hit back. The theater was a pressure cooker, the crowd feeding off every word. Producers hovered, backstage, whispering frantically, unsure whether to pull the plug. But Stephen was in his element, pacing the stage, his voice a whip. "Scared? I'm not scared, Elon. I'm embarrassed for you," Stephen said, his tone dripping with scorn. "Your Starlink satellites are junking up space. Your brain chips sound like sci-fi nonsense, and your Mars plan? You can't even keep a car factory running without drama." The audience roared, some laughing, others gasping at the brutality. Elon's face went red, his breath heavy. Stephen leaned in, relentless. "And let's talk X. You bought it to save free speech, but it's just a megaphone for chaos. You're not a visionary, Elon. You're a wrecking ball." The crowd was on its feet, the noise deafening. Elon took another step, now inches from Stephen, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't know what it takes," he said. "I've risked everything. My money, my life, for this. What have you risked? Nothing. You're just a clown with a microphone." The insult landed hard, and Stephen's eyes narrowed, his smirk gone. The screen ticked again. Tesla down 15%. The stakes were brutal, and neither man would yield. Stephen crossed his arms, his voice cold. "A clown? At least I don't pretend to be a savior while my companies bleed. Your investors are jumping ship, Elon. Your fans are waking up. You're not the future. You're a fading star." The crowd gasped, sensing blood. Elon's hands shook, his eyes darting to the screen, then back to Stephen. The weight of the night, Stephen's jabs, the crashing stocks, the world watching, pressed down like a vice. He ripped at the loose mic wire again, flinging it to the floor with a sharp crack. "I'm done with this," Elon shouted, his voice echoing. "You're not worth my time." He turned toward the exit, the crowd roaring, some begging him to stay, others cheering his retreat. Stephen didn't let up, stepping forward, his voice a final dagger. "Run! Away, Elon! Maybe you can tweet your way out of this one." The audience exploded, laughter and boos mixing in a wild cacophony. Elon froze mid-step, his shoulders hunched, his pride warring with his rage. For a moment it seemed he might turn back, might unleash one last attack. But then his shoulders sagged, the fight draining from him. He shoved the curtain aside and vanished into the wings, the cameras catching his silhouette as he disappeared. The crowd was stunned, a wave of murmurs rippling through the theater. Stephen stood alone on stage, his chest heaving, his face a mix of triumph and exhaustion. He turned to the audience, forcing a grin. "Well, folks, that's one way to end an interview." The band struck up a shaky tune, and the show cut to commercial. The fallout was instant. Online, the clip of Elon storming off racked up millions of views, sparking memes, debates, and hot takes. Tesla's stock closed the night down 18%, a brutal hit. Some called Stephen a hero for calling out Elon's hype. Others branded him a bully who'd gone too far. The Late Show's ratings soared, but Stephen, backstage, stared at his reflection in a dressing room mirror, wondering if he'd pushed too hard. For Elon, the night was a wound that wouldn't heal soon. He'd face the world again. But for now, the stage belonged to Stephen, and the story of their clash would echo for years.